Hi, I'm Sherry Summers, and I'm really glad to have you with me here today. Over the next little while, I'm going to be answering some of your questions about the American accent, about English pronunciation, and sometimes about English in general. So before I get started with answering a question today, I would like to tell you where you can ask your question. If you have a question about American accent, pronunciation, or occasionally just English in general, go to www.AskSherry.com. Now, Sherry's my name. It's AskSherry.com. AskSherry.com. And if I'm able, I will answer your question in one of our upcoming sessions. So I'd like to start with a question that I get a lot, especially from people who are just thinking about working on their pronunciation or accent, is how can I get an American accent? Before I answer that, I'd like to just point out that accents all over are great. There's nothing wrong with not having an American accent. But if you have learned English as a second language, chances are you have a foreign accent. And if you're living in the United States or in Canada, your accent might be getting in the way of your everyday life. And this is something that I want to help you with because I really don't want you to be stifled in any way or held back in any way just because of the way you speak. So sometimes learning about pronunciation and accent can really accelerate your life and help you feel more comfortable when you're dealing in an English-speaking environment. I know for a fact that very few people learn much about pronunciation or accent when they study English. And you may have studied English for many years. You might even speak English very, very well. But you may still have a difficulty with your communication just because of your accent. And I found this out years ago that sometimes people have studied English for 20 years. They may read and write very, very well, but sometimes they don't understand because of this interesting American accent that people are using. And even more importantly, sometimes they're not understood by others. And this can cause problems. It can cause problems in your job. It can cause problems in your community. It can even cause problems when you go in to visit your child's teacher if you're in an English-speaking environment. So my goal is to help you overcome some of the barriers, some of the problems that you have because of an accent. Now, how can I get an American accent? It's actually just 3 steps. Here's the first step. Now, I don't want to fool you and say that it's going to be very, very quick. Learning English itself took a while. Learning a new accent does take some time, but it's not going to be as long as it took you to learn English. Hopefully, it's kind of a fun adventure. Here's the first step. Step number 1 is you need to learn what you're doing that is different from native English speakers. The reason that we have accents in the first place is we grow up with the sounds that we know in our own language, and when we put them into the second language, so when you put your native sounds into English, or when I put my English sounds into your language, we have an accent. That's all it is. They're just sounds and patterns that we currently use in the new language. So you'll want to learn what you're doing that's different from native English speakers. And I consider this part of my job. It's very difficult for you to know what you're doing differently until somebody points that out. And as an accent trainer, that's what I can do, is I can say, this sound is different from what Americans are using. And the second thing I tell you is how you can use your mouth, your tongue, how you can use intonation, how you can use pitch to create new sounds. So you'll need to find out how to produce the sounds that you're currently not using, and this is my job as well. I want to show you what Americans are doing and show you how you can create these new sounds. And there are a lot of sounds in English that are not used in certain languages, and so you'll be surprised at some of the new things that you might find out. Now, after you learn what you're doing differently, and after you learn how to make these new sounds, gets interesting. You are going to have to assimilate. You're going to have to really become aware of how native speakers are using this sound. And this is quite interesting because after some time, in fact, lots and lots of people have told me, after they've become aware of new sounds, a whole new world opens up. There are things that they had never noticed before that suddenly they can hear. I call this pronunciation deafness. There's a lot of things that we can't hear because we were never aware of them before. So I want you to, step 2, really, really listen and become aware of how the native speakers are really using the sounds, these ones that you weren't aware of before. And this is a very important step in this process because you need to be able to pronounce it, but you also need to be able to hear it. And they kind of go step by step. You need one before the other and the other before the other. They hold each other's hands. They're both necessary. So you really need to listen and become aware of other people and how they're saying things. So this is your job. My job is to show you how to do it. Your job is to listen. And you have one more job. Your job, of course, is to practice, practice, practice. Assimilate, assimilate, assimilate. You need to start putting this into your everyday life. Now, you may have heard me tell this story before, but when I was young, I took piano lessons. And, well, I hate to admit it, but a lot of times I did a little bit of practice right before my piano lesson, and sometimes I did the practice right during my piano lesson. So in other words, I never became very good at playing the piano. If you learn how to use the new sounds, how to use the new intonation styles, if you learn these things and you don't use them, it's knowledge. All it is some knowledge in your head, but it doesn't become part of your life. So you need to practice, practice, practice. And another thing that sometimes people bring up is, Sherry, how do I practice? I'm having a conversation with somebody and I can't think of what it is I'm supposed to do. Well, I agree with that. When you're having a conversation with people, you can't always go back and think about how you're saying something. So this is why I think that you need to, and some people will disagree with this, but I think you almost need to drill yourself. You need to practice something so many times that it becomes easy for you. Have you ever heard of how the military drills certain things over and over and over again? When they're practicing how to do something, they'll do it again and again and again. That's because when they get into a situation where it's needed, they should be able to do it automatically without thinking. And I don't want you to drill so much that you get a headache, but drill yourself. For example, if you're practicing maybe a sound like the TH, every day, give yourself a list of words that have a TH sound in them and say them again and again. So you get your mouth used to going into that position. You get yourself used to saying these words. And when it comes time for you to have a real conversation, you know what you're doing. You can also practice a lot by reading out loud. Reading out loud helps you to focus on what you're doing, and it helps you to, again, get that muscle memory by focusing on maybe something like the TH. And some people laugh when I tell them this. I also think that it's a very good idea to talk to yourself. Now, I don't recommend this for when you're in public or when you're with somebody else. They might think you're crazy. But talking to yourself when you are taking a shower, for example, or driving somewhere, or taking a walk, or some people do this when they just exercise in general. These kinds of situations give you an opportunity to practice a conversation. You can pretend like you're having a conversation with your boss or with a colleague or with a client, and you put yourself in these kinds of situations outside of the real situation, and you give yourself enough practice to where when you do get into the situation, it's a lot easier because you've done it before. It's a different kind of drill. So you'll need to first learn what it is that you need to know. Second, become very aware of the new styles and what you're hearing around you. And third, and really, really important, a lot of people actually miss out on this. They don't practice enough. Practice, practice, practice. Because as they say, practice makes perfect. In fact, I believe very strongly that changing your speech habits have a lot to do with just what I said, habit. It's all about habit. If you've been speaking a very long time in English using your old habits, it might take you a little bit longer to develop some new habits. But when you work on your habits again and again, you'll find yourself speaking English much more clearly, and your confidence will go up, and I'll be so happy for you. So the goal, in fact, is to be confident, to speak clearly, to be able to feel good about what you're doing in your everyday English, your everyday life. So that's just one little bit of how to learn an American accent. I actually did a conversation with somebody. Somebody interviewed me recently. A good friend of mine, Daniel Cotton, interviewed me on what it takes to learn an American accent. We recorded that conversation, and I put it into a nice little gift for you on the 4 parts of accent. And I'd like to offer that to you if you would like it. You'll just need to go to www.accentonspeaking.com/gift. Okay, Accent on Speaking. ACCENTONSPEAKING.com/gift. If you'll go over there, I'll be happy to give this to you. It's about a 30-minute interview. I've also put it into a transcription so you can read along if you like, and I hope that you will enjoy that because that will go over the 4 different parts of accent. So in the meantime, if you have some other questions, you'd like to know some specifics. For example, people ask me things like, how do you pronounce the word whatever? If there's a word that you're not really sure about pronouncing, or if you have a question about a specific sound, or even more importantly, a question about intonation, rhythm, timing. What I mean by that is, where's the pitch? Does it go high or low? Is it long or short? These kinds of things make a really, really huge difference in American English. So these kinds of things that you have questions about, please go and ask me your question. As I said, it's www.asksheri.com, S-H-E-R-I, and I will try to answer your question. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to answer everybody's questions, but especially when we have things that seem to be very common, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. So I'm really glad that you were here with me today. I hope this helps a little bit, and please look forward to some of the upcoming sessions on American accent, on English pronunciation, and English in general. So thanks once again, and I hope to be with you next time. Thanks.